Hi there, and welcome to this video on GCSE Biology for the AQA Specification, focusing on the topic of adaptations, interdependence and competition, and in particular on abiotic factors. I'm Shumina from StudyMind, where we help you revise GCSE Biology with our helpful video tutorials, tailored to your subject, your specification, and to you. If you're new here, make sure you click the subscribe button. Whilst you are watching, please leave any comments below if you're unsure about anything, and let us know if it's your first time watching our videos so we can send you our free revision materials. We also have helpful timestamps below for each part of the video to help guide you through the specification. So let's get started. Hello there, and welcome to this tutorial on abiotic factors. So in the last tutorial we had a look at a lot of definitions regarding communities, and we briefly came across the term abiotic factors, but we didn't go into much detail on it, so that's what we'll be doing in today's session. So we're going to have a look at a few examples of various abiotic factors, and then we're going to have a look at what kind of effect these factors have on their respective organisms. So these are the relevant specification points for today's tutorial, so as per usual, go through these at the end, make sure you understand what's going on. And so first of all, let's start off with more basic definitions. So abiotic factors are non-living factors that affect a community. So remember, biotic factors are our living factors, but abiotic factors are the non-living factors. So in the last tutorial, I think I gave a rock as my example of an abiotic factor, but other non-living factors include wind and humidity. So basically anything that you think can affect a particular environment that is a natural factor is an abiotic factor, but something that is non-living, remember. So first of all, light intensity. So as I'm sure you can probably guess, light intensity is an incredibly important abiotic factor because plants require light for photosynthesis. So therefore, if there is competition for light in an ecosystem, those organisms that are more adapted to catch more light are more likely to survive. Because remember, there is competition within the same trophic level, and we saw this in the previous tutorial. So producers, for example, which we find on our first trophic level, are going to be competing for light in an ecosystem. And therefore we get this competition between organisms on the same trophic level, and if they are adapted to catch more light, they are more likely to survive and reproduce. Okay, so this is why light intensity is an incredibly important abiotic factor. So an example of an adaptation that would allow particular plants to compete better for light would be having larger leaves. So, for example, in this diagram, you can see that there is a plant on the left here that has larger leaves, a plant on the right here that has smaller leaves. The one with the smaller leaves perhaps is not making full use of the available light intensity because it's got a smaller surface area to actually capture these light rays, whereas the larger plant is perhaps more efficient at picking up more of whatever limited light intensity there is. And therefore, at the end of the day, not literally at the end of the day, but overall the outcome is that the larger plant is going to be able to outcompete the smaller plant. So the smaller plant is going to have a lack of resources, so in this case light intensity, this abiotic factor, and therefore it's going to eventually die because it's going to be outcompeted by the other organisms on the same trophic level, because they're all competing for the same thing, which is light intensity here. So some plants have developed an optimum light intensity, which means that some plants require a lot of light, whereas others do not. So examples are shown below. So cacti, for example, grow well with little light, whereas plants such as aloe vera require a lot of light. Now, similarly to light intensity, temperature is an abiotic factor, and both plants and animals have an optimum temperature to work out because of their enzymes, and there have been previous tutorials on this, so go back and have a look at those for more detail on enzymes and their function and their action at optimum temperatures. But Just to summarise, if the temperature exceeds the optimum temperature, then the enzyme will denature, which means that its active site will change shape and therefore it will work less efficiently. So in this example here, you can see that the temperature is too low, our enzyme is working too slowly. Here, the temperature is at its optimum and our enzyme is working at its optimal level. But if the temperature exceeds a certain temperature, then the enzyme will denature, its active site will change shape. So different plants have different optimum levels of moisture. So we've seen that different plants have different optimum temperatures that they work at. They have different optimum light intensities, but also different optimum levels of moisture. So if you overwater a plant, the soil will become waterlogged, and this is suited to some plants, but with other plants this might mean that the roots will be drowned and unable to respire, therefore killing the plant. Now that was moisture, so now we move on to soil and aquatic pH. So some plants grow well in areas with a higher pH and others grow well in more acidic soils, so those with a lower pH. Remember, higher pH, so the further we go up this side of the scale is our higher pH, that's more alkaline. The lower down we go, so the lower the pH number, the more acidic. So some plants, like the hydrangea plants, can grow in both types of soil. Now, if the pH of an aquatic ecosystem changes, it could have a huge effect because of the wildlife within this aquatic ecosystem, because organisms have adapted to survive at different pH levels in the water. Now, mineral content is another abiotic factor, so plants have different optimal mineral content levels, so I'm sure you can see the pattern here. Different plants have different optimal mineral content levels, as is the case for most abiotic factors. So some plants require a high mineral content to grow well, and an example of this is many plants require a lot of magnesium, because magnesium is a key ingredient for the composition of chlorophyll, which is contained within the chloroplasts, which is where photosynthesis occurs. So magnesium is really, really key to the proper functioning and survival of the plant. And some plants even trap organisms in the soil in order to increase the level of minerals. Now, wind intensity and direction is an example of another abiotic factor. So organisms often prefer sheltered environments. Some locations are very affected by wind, and this will mean that the plants will suffer because they will have poorer stability, and the seeds of the plant will be easily dispersed around. And this in turn will affect the organisms that feed upon these, and the plant will struggle to grow. So plants also require an optimum carbon dioxide level. So higher levels of carbon dioxide will lead to increased plant growth because, remember, carbon dioxide is required for photosynthesis. And so, for example, woodland areas have a high level of carbon dioxide and therefore that promotes plant growth, whereas plants in other areas have evolved to survive in areas with lower carbon dioxide levels, so they have a different optimum carbon dioxide level to those that grow near woodland areas. Now, oxygen is also an abiotic factor. So oxygen dissolves into the water in order to provide supplies for aquatic organisms. So in polluted rivers, the oxygen level decreases. And you can see why this would be a problem, because organisms, aquatic organisms, need oxygen to survive, to respire. And so this can kill many organisms. However, other organisms such as slugworms can thrive in these areas with lower oxygen. So again, you see the utilisation of different optimum levels of abiotic factors, in this case oxygen. So in the exam, you might have to take all of this information into account and analyse tables of data. So an example is given below. But I do recommend that you do go and take a look at past paper questions, because those will be most helpful in practicing this topic. But just to break it down to you, you can see that you'll probably be given a normal kind of concentration of an abiotic factor and a value that indicates a higher concentration and a value that indicates a lower concentration, and you might have to interpret data given what they've told you in this table. But as I said, go and have a look at some past paper questions, because that will be the best way to practice this. So now let's have a look at some practice questions. So have a look at these statements and decide which one or ones are true. So I'll just leave them up here for you and then we'll go through it. So perhaps pause the video here and take some time to just read through these and decide. Right, so high wind levels are an example of an abiotic factor. We know this is true because we've just discussed abiotic factors in this tutorial, and we know that they are non-living factors. The wind does not live, I think, so there we go. High wind levels are an example of an abiotic factor, non-living factor. Slugworms thrive in high oxygen levels, so we saw in a previous slide that they actually thrive in low oxygen levels, so they might have a survival advantage in polluted areas of water. Plants require a high oxygen level for photosynthesis. Think of your photosynthesis equation. It's carbon dioxide we need for higher levels of photosynthesis, so this statement would be right if it said high carbon dioxide level. And if temperatures are too low, then enzymes will denature. Also false, because it's if temperatures are too high, then enzymes will denature. If temperatures are too low, the enzymes will just work at a lower rate rather than denaturing usually. So that is all for today. Just go back through, make sure you understand what we mean by an abiotic factor, and also just understand the reasoning behind how each of these factors can affect a community. But well done for today, and I'll see you for the next tutorial. Thanks for watching this free video from StudyMind. If you liked this video, make sure to subscribe to catch our newest videos by clicking below, and leave a comment on a topic you'd like a video on. Click here to watch more videos in our series for GCSE Biology, or visit our website studymind.co.uk for free past paper compilations by topic and specification.